Great to see you here again. This is another video offered to you by the Ceuster Academy. When you're here for the first time, don't forget to click on the subscribe button, click on the bell, so whenever we upload a new video, YouTube will send you a reminder. In this video, we'll be looking at the projects, we're looking at risks and finance, and how to consider, how to evaluate the projects. What are the parameters we can use to differentiate one project from the other and select the best project. Now, basically, when we have a project and when we're looking at the best project, we have to try to find out how do we evaluate these projects. Now, project selection is a process that is very important. It's based on the business cases, but you may have a lot of good business cases. You may look into different sets of projects and you want to find the best combination of projects. Now, companies may have standard operating procedures or SOPs which describe how to deal with certain elements of project management. The way to evaluate projects may be one of those parameters, but as a company you should have a way to evaluate them. There are some financial parameters you can use, there are some other parameters, risk levels, and so on. Now, when we look in general, what are the basic parameters we have to consider? First of all is the support to the strategy. Projects are there to support the strategy, and we have to be sure that the projects that we are selecting, that they support that strategy. Now, some projects may be more important than the others, and some projects may have a specific time impact. Another element that we have to consider is the risk level. Is the risk level of the project within acceptable parameters? Every company has a certain way to deal with risk. When you're dealing with rockets, your risk level will be a little bit different than when you are working with financial solutions or when you are working with software applications. You have to see what is the risk level that you consider, how risky is your project. And of course, the project also has to be financially viable. We have to find out what are the financial parameters, what is the financial performance of the project. And we can do that by looking at financial parameters. You can learn more about those in our presentations related to finance, and you will find a lot of information about financial parameters. A thing that can be done also is to define what we call a return on investment policy. And a return on investment policy is basically a policy where you will define what are the conditions for the parameters. We will come back to that later, but these are different elements that we have to consider. And as a project manager, you have to understand how these elements work. And they're basically part of the business analysis. When you have a business analyst in your team, you will see that those people are basically dealing with these things. Now, we have projects that support the strategy. We look at the strategic goals of the organization, let's say, of the strategic goal of the project, of the company or the organization. And we also have to see what is the combined effect of all those projects. We're looking at the portfolio. How do we optimize that portfolio? We're talking about a project in this case, but we may have to consider multiple projects. What is the importance of these different projects? What is the best mix of projects to support the strategy? And we have to combine, of course, elements like risk, cost, and let's say outcome, the importance on the support of the strategy. So it can be quite a complex combination of parameters that we have to consider. Now, we also have projects which are not always related to the growth of the company itself. Typically, when we look at company growth, we look at projects related to developing new services or products. For example, you develop a new app, that app will create more revenue for you. Now, we also have different types of projects which relate to results, improvement basically. And we are defining a project to improve what we are doing. We are not basically supporting the strategy, the growth strategy as such, but we are supporting that strategy in a way that we are improving certain elements. It can be part of the strategy to improve the quality levels. You have to improve the quality levels to be, for example, competing with other companies. So it's a little bit different than just creating a product or a service. Now we can also look at process efficiency, waste reduction, quality. These are typically projects that are improving what we are doing. They're not creating a new product, but they're improving the overall performance of our projects, of our processes basically. We also look at risk levels. When we have certain risk levels, we have to identify what is the probability that our project will succeed. And we can define for each project the risk level. If we have project with high risk level, we also want to have a higher return on the project, but also we may decide to eliminate them. Now, these are things that we have to consider because it also depends on how risk aware is the company. If your company is normally dealing with risky projects, they probably will be having higher risk tolerances. When in the other case where you have a company where you don't have a lot of risks, you probably will have a different tolerance. You want to have lower risk levels. All these parameters can be defined, but also have consequences. Like I said before, a higher risk level also means that you want to have a higher gain, higher profits when the project is completed. Now, when we look at the project selection, we can look at the different parameters. For example, we want to select a project based on its financial parameters. This is also part of the business case and the financial evaluations that are in there. And what we have to consider is what is the initial investment and what are the cash flows, what is the project generating later on. When we have a product or a service, what are the cash flows that we create? What is the extra money that is coming in? When we talk about results, it means what are the savings that we get, right? That will be a reduction of your negative cash flows. Your cash flow should be higher because you reduce the cost. All those parameters can be combined in what I already called before a return on investment policy, and that's the basis for financial evaluations. Now, what financial parameters can we consider? Typically, we have payback time, return on investment, net present value, internal rate of return, modified internal rate of return, economic value add, and profitability index, and perhaps some other parameters that may be used in more complex situations. All these parameters, how they work, how we define them, you can find in our videos related to finance and especially in time value of money. All the parameters will be explained in detail there. Here we will just use them. Now, how can we optimize our decision? Now, we have different decision-making models that we can use, and I will only mention them here. I will not discuss them in detail. But for example, we have general decision-making models, which are, for example, expected monetary value analysis and decision trees. Here you're going to compare different solutions. You will integrate probabilities, you will integrate outcomes, profits, and you can compare different scenarios to find the best scenario for your solution. On the other hand, there are also more complicated decision-making tools. One of them is, for example, linear programming, where we can optimize the number of projects to find the combination of projects that give us the highest return or the lowest cost. It depends on how you define the problem. There is also the method of the decision matrix or multi-criteria analysis. We will talk about that later with some examples, and you probably will find some other videos related to linear programming, the expected monetary value analysis, and the decision trees. You see that making a decision, making a selection of projects or between projects is not always an easy decision to make, and you have to put there some structure. You have to define how are you going to evaluate the projects. It is also very important to do that because the evaluation of the projects will also be used later when you're doing changes. You're re-evaluating your project based on the changes and based on the initial evaluation methods that you used. So that was about selecting projects. Of course, we can go a lot deeper. We may have some more videos about this, but do not forget, subscribe to our channel if you didn't do it yet. Click on the little bell so YouTube will warn you when there is a new video. And of course, I'm looking forward to seeing you in our next videos. Thank you and bye-bye.